That's Brian Peacock. I'm Jason Aponte. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle have a chance to return on Sunday. And me and Brian will discuss, is this a must-win game in Week 4 against the New England Patriots? Stick around right after this. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Brian Peacock. This is another episode of Peacock and Aponte powered by Underdog. Use promo code Aponte to get your deposit matched up to $1,000. And this weekend, any pick'em games that you actually choose, Underdog is giving you 10% of bonus cash. Higher lowers, 10% back after the Monday Night Football game. I'm all over Jawan Jennings, and whatever his number is going to be, I'm going to be saying higher. But after all that, Brian, what's going on, man? It's nice to see you again.
Hey, it's great to see you. I didn't know we were getting haircuts before this episode, man. I
gotta let you. Do I gotta let you know about that stuff, like off the rip, or like do we have to have a like? Hey, I'm gonna pull up with a haircut this time. You might want to go run out.
Hold on, let me go do something about this and pump it up real quick, and I'll be right back.
Oh my goodness, we're off to a blazing start. Shout out to everybody that's in here, guys. Make sure you guys like this and subscribe to this video. Go ahead, let me see.
This is all I got. I'll brush my hair.
Oh my goodness. Hey, love the lid though. The lid looks good at least.
One of a kind Locked On 49ers hat. Make sure you subscribe daily on the Locked On Podcast Network. But we're going overtime here. Make sure you subscribe on Overtime with BP. We are simulcasted with Jason Aponte. I'm pumped for it, man. 49ers, they got to get this one, right?
Yeah. This, you hate to use the word must win. But when you start to think about where this team is, especially after that game, and the historical precedent of teams that start 1-3 and the likelihood of them making the playoffs, even with the expanded playoffs, it starts to become, yes, you need to start racking up wins. Now, an AFC win isn't going to dictate any sort of tiebreakers, but you've got to start beating the teams that you know you can beat and should beat, because the schedule is about to get tougher, regardless of all the injuries that are, just across the league. Like, we just found out right before we came on, the Raiders are going to be without Devontae Adams and Max Crosby. It's like, instead of telling us who's out, people should just start saying who's actually playing, right?
The Raiders without Max Crosby is a Raiders I don't want on my television screen, by the way, because that's an ugly football team, in my opinion. And he's worth the price of admission by himself, and he makes them a lot better. And I think that kind of goes to show you when you can really get home up front, when your defensive line can create havoc on the opposing team's offense, opposing team's quarterback, it makes everything better for everybody on the entire roster, because it makes it easier on your back seven. And guess what? You're giving the ball back to your offense, and they get more opportunities to go score. And I think the 49ers right now are struggling with that, and they are not even missing their best pass rusher.
I guess that's where we should start, right? We find out that Javon Hargrave out for the season following his best game of the season. Some might even say his best game as a 49er. And we still, even with that performance, and Malik Collins had some good reps as well, too, we still felt like this defensive line underwhelmed, particularly down the stretch in this game where they couldn't, convert on third down. Is it time to really put panic to this now, especially with finding out that Jordan Elliott was carted off, in practice? They're already thin at defensive tackle. Where are we right now with confidence level with this defensive line that we at least thought would be able to provide at least a little bit of pressure, but it doesn't seem like that's what's going on right now.
I'm a little bit more worried about the production from the guys who are healthy on the edge, to be honest with you, because with what we've seen from Javon Hargrave's a really good player. I think he's probably been a little disappointing for what we all expected him to be as a big free agent signing for the 49ers. Not that he's not good, but he hasn't been great. He hasn't been like unstoppable. He hasn't been that force that I think the 49ers hoped they were getting when they signed him. And so, T.Y. McGill's a veteran player. Is he the one that's going to get called up? It looks like very likely. Maybe they have to bring up two guys. Jordan Elliott is there. He's a bigger body guy. Evan Anderson, undrafted guy. He's a bigger body player. Could he stop the run? You start getting very thin there, obviously. And Kevin Givens is a player the 49ers like. The production hasn't been so amazing from the starters that it's going to be like a drastic fall off, in my opinion. Can you just, to be honest with you, I'd rather just have the bigger body guy. Just put Evan Anderson and Jordan Elliott in there and take up the most blocks and let the athletes do the athletic things behind them and around them. Maybe that's what the 49ers are missing, is someone who can two gap a little bit more inside. And they've had problems replacing DJ Jones since they let him walk in free agency. And, and I don't think they should have paid DJ Jones the salary he got in Denver either, but they haven't done a really great job at replacing players. And I would probably start to look toward the draft, Jason. And I don't think you would argue with me in saying that drafting third round kickers and backup tight ends is a great plan for building your football team when there are players that might be able to make a difference on either offensive or defensive line there for you. And I think that's where we're going to start to see some cracks in this thing for the 49ers, because they're such a top heavy team. They're getting closer and closer to that Los Angeles Rams stars and scrubs build that they had a few years ago. And then when the stars start getting hurt and start breaking down, start aging out, then you start to get in a little bit of a jam there with how your roster build is. And so the combination of Christian McCaffrey being out after you are not only paying him his salary, which is top of the league, you traded a second, third, fourth, fifth round pick for him. You spent 3 first-round picks on a quarterback that isn't playing quarterback for you. Those are all draft picks that we're seeing a lag, and that delay you don't see right away. You see that 2 or 3 years down the road. So we're starting to see that come up in the 49ers depth right now, and especially on the defensive line and the offensive line. And that's where I would start to point to the 49ers team building failures, because they've put resources into the D-line. And it's been the mission statement from day one of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, but I think they've started to fall a little bit short. And you start to look at their defensive line, and it's like, well, okay, wait a second. They got Bosa with the number 2 pick in the draft, and Bosa is awesome. Nobody's going to complain about having Nick Bosa there. But then you start to look at the rest of them. It's like, okay, so you kind of overpaying for mediocre veterans to fill in the rest of the group. Where have you drafted and developed the rest of the talent on that defensive line? And the answer is they haven't.
Yeah, and hindsight's always 2020, but I applauded the 49ers for actually not going defensive tackle, defensive line, and trying to prioritize coverage, right? And I think the problem with this defense is twofold. It's the secondary was supposed to give this defensive line coverage sacks, but this defense feels a little disjointed, on both ends, whether it's not getting there or just coverage busts. It's a little bit off on both sides. And I kind of wanted to talk about Nick Bosa a little bit. Look, I think nobody questions the fact that Nick Bosa is one of the top 1, 2, 3 defensive ends in the league. But I feel like there's a lot of always, he's double teamed a lot. He's seeing a lot of chipping. Yeah, well, look at TJ Watt. TJ Watt is chipped more than anybody. You think people are just allowing TJ Watt to be by himself? This is part of being a guy that is a stud. But yet TJ Watt finds ways to disrupt games, I feel like, more and more. Not that Nick Bosa's bad, but when I have one of the 1, 2, top 3 guys, I need them to be more disruptive. I need to hear Nick Bosa's name called a little bit more. Yeah, we get the stats after and we look at the pressures and we say, hey, that's a pretty good game. But it's just in those big situations, TJ Watt is forcing a fumble, getting them off the field on same thing with Myles Garrett, right? That's the type of stuff that I feel like we're missing from Bosa. Not that he's been bad, but I need him to get back to being dominant. And I think it's still in there for him. I think that's a little bit frustrating for people.
I think it's definitely in there for him. And look, if Bosa's got extra attention on him, then that means there should be one-on-ones in other places that the 49ers are winning. And right now, this defense doesn't look close to the one we saw with, Buckner and Armstead and D Ford. Like, that defense was taking over games. And I feel like the 49ers defensive line has been slowly getting a little bit worse, slowly getting a little worse. And like, Leonard Floyd's a pro. Malik Collins is a pro. They've got a professional defensive line. There's teams around the league. Look at the Arizona Cardinals defensive line. They would take they'd take the entire 49ers depth chart right now, right? But the 49ers aren't getting the production I think I would expect, and they're not getting difference-making plays from the guys up front. I think part of their plan to stop the run better is that they're pinning the Airs back a little bit less this year, which I also think is part of it. They're kind of playing the run on the way to the quarterback a little bit more. Has that helped? I don't know, because the pass rush is worse and they're still not really stopping the run all that great. So then you go back to the drawing board potentially, and there's plenty of time to do it. You still have the Kasurek wide 9 front. We got a new defensive coordinator. They're changing things in the back end, playing a lot more man coverage. Maybe we can talk about coverage percentages if you want, because I have those after 3 weeks. Do you need to go to more zones so you have more eyes on the running backs and then play it that way? They definitely have to change something up. Is scheme enough to get it done, or do they have to go shopping at the trade deadline is my question.
And another thing is, and I want to float this out to you, is my sense of Leonard Floyd's signing was someone who would be a situational pass rusher. And I don't know if on base down exactly that is really putting him in a spot to continue to be impactful. Like, it needs to just be obvious passing downs, third downs, get him out there, speed rush him, no more stunts, allow him to bend and get around somebody on a one-on-one in an obvious passing down. And I think that part is a little bit weird because now without Hargrave, what would a base down lineup look like? Bosa, Malik Collins, your two gross models, maybe Jordan Elliott. And I don't know. Like, I think you could play gross models on base downs. It's just Leonard Floyd has a high motor, but I'm not sure that at his age right now, it has to be absolutely like him being out there in situational, like go get the quarterback type thing, like almost like a little bit like a D Ford, where it's just kind of just break them out when it's obvious.
It's interesting because I do think that was the plan. Yetur Gross-Matos was the big end, and then he would kind of move around and maybe rush from inside as well sometimes, and you'd bring in Leonard Floyd, and they would kind of be a 50-50 split. And we started to see a little bit more of that. Yetur Gross-Matos started the season injured, so maybe that changed, their plan there. Leonard Floyd, for being a narrow guy, is pretty powerful, and I've actually been impressed with his ability to take on offensive tackles. So I don't think that's a problem necessarily, even though I don't think that was their plan to have him be their base end. He's just their best guy coming off the edge. And so we'll see if that starts to look a little bit more like a 50-50 split, and having Floyd come in a little bit fresher, a little bit quicker coming off the edge to try to produce some more opportunities as a pass rusher. And I think we will see Yetur Gross-Matos taking some of those third down reps on the inside now that Javon Hargrave is out. So, a combination of Yetur Gross-Matos on third downs with Jordan Elliott as more of a run stuffing, two gapping type on rundowns. Could that give you most of what you lost in Hargrave? I don't think it couldn't, but I want to see more pressure from everybody. Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Nick Bosa, all of them. It's not just the interior to me. It's the outside too. They've got to get home more often. They've got to create havoc on opposing offenses, and we're not seeing that enough. Get off the field on third down, for the love of God.
Right. And there's that blitz number that's out there. The 49ers are at the bottom of the league in blitzing. Is that the answer? I don't know, but you do have to get more creative. I think that's a lot of what a lot of fans complain about is it's just, hey, we're just going to rush forward and we're just going to hope for the best. It's almost like you don't have to, throw everything out that you've been working on, but mixing in a little bit more, showing a little bit more, being a little bit more unpredictable could. But you have the numbers for coverages and everything if you want to talk about that, because I do think that what we're missing here a little bit is the coverage, which we talked about the secondary all offseason, was supposed to help with this thinner defensive line because it was going to allow those guys more times. We even uttered the word coverage sacks. It just, if one is working well, the other's not. And if one is working well, the other's not. It just seems like they're both like just a little bit off and they're not together right now.
And by the way, I do want to drop a nugget from Brett Coleman on Twitter. He does fantastic work on YouTube. I'm sure a lot of our people watching right now watch his NFL coverage on YouTube. And he dropped this little statistical nugget, and I want to talk about coverage as well. But he said, in true drop back pass reps, the 49ers defensive line is 26th in pressure percentage. And even worse than the Carolina Panthers, who traded away Brian Burns in the offseason. And he said he feels a lot of people outside of the local Bay Area media aren't talking enough about just how bad of a sign that is for their ceiling this season. And we've talked about it a lot, and it's nice to see someone doing national coverage. Kind of notice the same thing we've been talking about with the 49ers defensive line. And 26, I mean, the 49ers should be first, top 5, top 10 in a down year. 26th in true pass rate pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Like that's just not going to get it done. And so that's definitely a problem there. Can I share my screen? Actually, hold on. I'll put this on your screen for the folks. I can't share my screen. Okay. Even though
I'll just take this. I'll take this off real quick so you can do that.
I will. I don't know where it is. There it is. Okay, cool. So here are the coverage rates for the 40 or for every team in the NFL this year. The 49ers are right here in the middle. And last year, the 49ers were well over 50%, like 60 to 70%, cover 3, cover 4, a lot of zone coverages. And, the 49ers starting with Salah was a lot of cover 3, and they kind of slowly drifted away from that. Cover 4, cover 6, a little bit more stuff, some man, but mostly a zone defense. They've been playing a lot more man this year, specifically cover 1. They're 32% cover 1 this year. That's this number right here. If the folks are watching on YouTube, can't quite see it. 32% cover 1, cover 0% of the time. That's the least that everybody does. That's like when you bring everybody and have nobody over the top. 49ers don't do that. But the 49ers haven't been getting home enough. They haven't been blitzing a lot. They're low, very low, if not the lowest in the NFL, I think, in blitz rate as well. And if the front four is not getting home and you're playing man coverage, that's just going to make life a little bit more difficult. Cover 2 percentage, 16%. They're 1% cover 2 man. So when they go man, it's 1 high for the most part. So that's their plan to, so they got 1 deep, cover 1 man. And then they've got 8 in the box to stop the run. So that's clearly been their plan to start the season, but it's not working. So are we going to see them start to go a little bit more to the cover 3 and cover 4 stuff? They're only at 20% and 17% on cover 3 and cover 4 coverages this year compared to last year, which was, I think, nearly double of both of those. So a lot more cover 1, a lot more man, a lot less cover 3 and cover 4 zone. Do they just have to go back with what worked before? Do they need to find a way to bring pressure with the blitz? But one of those things absolutely has to happen, because you either got to cover guys up or get home with your pass rush. And right now they're not really doing either.
You know what's funny is we all wondered what Brandon Staley's influence on this defense would be. And when he was with the Rams, he kind of ushered in the too high safety look, like for everyone else to take, like from Fangio, right? Like the blueprint was from Fangio, and he did that. And it was almost like Staley, when the defense in 2020, when the Rams had the number 1 defense, was saying, we'd like for you to run the ball. You can have that. We'll give you running the ball, but you're not going to hit us over the top on anything. And it's kind of funny that this defense, for all that we talked about with the secondary, isn't doing that as much, even with Brandon Staley there. So I wonder what the creative process is with those two, and who's really giving the tips and who's really in charge, because it almost felt like Staley was there to oversee Sorensen in his first year, and he's a big secondary guy. So to see that it's single high mostly, and that's what I've been seeing, obviously everybody's been seeing on the broadcast and on the tape, it just kind of goes against what worked with Brandon Staley when he was, running that Rams defense in 2020.
The only thing I can tell that Brandon Staley's had an impact on so far is making Kyle Shanahan go for it on 4th downs. So maybe he's the one that has Shanahan's ear there in those situations. That actually didn't work all that great for Brandon Staley when he was the head coach.
Yeah.
And a lot of the players have talked about in camp how smart Staley was, and helping them out in the secondary. But something's clearly off right now. And I think the word I would use is just disjointed. Just something has to come together with the front and the coverage and how they call plays. And I think it's a learning process. Remember, people wanted to fire D'Amico Ryans. People wanted to fire Robert Saleh when they first started. People clearly wanted to fire, and the 49ers did fire Steve Wilkes last year. So I wouldn't squarely say Nick Sorensen's not good at his job, but they do have to figure something out right now. I don't know what that's going to be. It's a good opponent for them to get right, though, in the New England Patriots, because they're not a team that's taking it to people through the air. That's not a team that's really good on 3rd downs. And so they're not even equipped to beat the 49ers, where they've been bad recently, except for maybe beating them in the special teams category.
Yeah, I mean, you heard it here first. Jacoby Brissett, 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, called by Brian Peacock, basically. And it seems like whenever we talk about like the predictions before the game, it's like exactly like the opposite of all of that, right? Like, it's
How
just
about the way this Cowing stuff from last week?
What did I say? What did I say, man? How did I know?
It's hilarious that John Lynch, the general manager of the team that drafted the guys, like, hey, look out, Cowing this week's probably going to get some opportunities. And then Kyle Shanahan not only gives him literally 0 opportunities with the offense. After the game, he's asked about it, and he's like, he's not even
close. He's like, he's not even close to being ready. It's just like, that's why I told you it was Lynch being hopeful. Hey, we drafted this guy. He's got a little juice. Maybe we might see him. And Kyle's just like, nope, run number 10 out there. But I don't want to talk about that Rams game, because this is Patriots week and we're headed this way. So heading into Patriots week, a welcome sight is George Kittle, who's actually been practicing. It feels like he's way more close to go. Deebo Samuel, possibly. Deebo Samuel and Kittle. I want to ask this. Do you believe that Deebo's out there for one of 2 reasons? One, because I believe the 49ers see this game as, we've got to have this one regardless. Or 2, I just want to give Jared Mayo and that defense and the Patriots something else to think about throughout the week. Honestly, I think that Deebo and the 49ers offense are like, nope, we've got to get our guys out there and win this game. So we might have to push it.
Yeah, it's rough because we're doing a little lunchtime live here, so we don't know exactly what the Friday practice report is going to be, and that's usually the most important. But we do know that Kittle and Deebo are back to practice, and it sounds like Kittle's a little closer than Deebo. So if I had to guess, it sounds like Kittle's going to be able to go, and Deebo will find out if he's a full participant in practice Friday. Then that's a good sign for him being able to go as well. But look, like Brock Purdy is. Well, let's see. Brock Purdy is third in the NFL in passing right now, but the only two guys ahead of him played this week. So,
Dak, okay.
Yeah, he'll leapfrog both Daniel Jones and Dak once he, as long as he puts up 200
Daniel
yards.
Jones.
Well,
just
Daniel
like we drew it up.
because he just played. But
yeah, but just like we drew it up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He'll drop back down to like 15 or whatever. He's after all these quarterbacks with 700 yards, passing him up with 150 passing yards. But Brock Purdy, after this week, is very likely to be number one in passing yards in the NFL, unless someone goes crazy huge. Jordan Mason is likely to be top 5, and right now he's second in the league behind only Saquon Barkley, with 324 rushing yards. The 49ers have a top 5 receiver, even though they've been banged up and had one guy hold out. Juwan Jennings is 276. So their third best receiver is playing like their best receiver, and he's top 5 in receiving yards in the NFL. The 49ers don't really have a problem on offense. They don't have a problem collecting yards. They have a problem on third downs right now, and it's offensively and it's defensively. And the offense is going to be fine. Like Purdy is answering every question possible right now. Even when the 49ers don't have stars on offense, they don't have Christian McCaffrey, they can still run the ball. That's not a problem. They don't have Deebo. They can still have the next man up, step in and give you 11 catches for 175 yards or whatever it was, the 3 touchdowns that Juwan Jennings had last week. You would like them to be able to block a little bit better up front, specifically Colton McKivitz, who's got one of the tougher matchups this week against Keon White, who's awesome, probably the best pass rusher on the New England Patriots right now. And if the numbers I saw, if I'm correct, Trent Williams still has the best pass block win rate in the NFL, despite looking not quite like his Hall of Fame self the first 3 weeks, needing some IVs, a couple different points in the first 3 weeks of the season. He's number 1 in the NFL pass block win rate, and then the other 3 guys on the interior, left guard, center, and right guard, are all 10 to 15-ish, 10 to 18-ish as far as pass block win rate this year. And then Colton McKivitz is all the way down in the 50s in his ranking versus other offensive tackles in pass block win rate. So, when they need to get those yards rushing, they haven't been able to do it, and they've been getting beat at just inopportune times, as pass blockers too. So there's some things that 49ers need to clean up, but the offensive side of it's really not that much of a problem. We all thought that Colton McKivitz should get more competition. By the way, Spencer Burford taking some reps to tackle in practice, something I've been calling for a while, especially since he lost his job to Dominic Pooney at right guard. But I'm not worried about the offense. That's what I'm getting at right now. And I don't even care if you're without Deebo and you're without Christian McCaffrey. The offense is fine. It's not the problem. Right now I'm looking at the defense, and I'm wondering why they still are too talented to be playing the way they are right now. And so I have hope that they're going to really turn things around at some point, and this week could really help them. But they're just disjointed. Even the head coach and GM are on the same page right now.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the offense either. That was my biggest takeaway from that game. It's like it's a game where everybody's rolling everything to Aiyuk. Cool, we're just going to give Juwan Jennings the ball a bunch, and he's going to win, right? Like, and you feel good about that. Speaking of Colton McKivitz, everybody was banging the table for Kingsley Suyamada. He is just as bad. And this just goes to the idea of, well, just draft any right tackle. Well, how could they let the Chiefs get him? Okay, but this is the point, is everyone wants to draft the right tackle, but what if the right tackle's not good and it's early in his career, but he's not playing well? He got benched. I just want to point that out for the people that are just like, I don't understand. They really wanted Roger Rosengarten, and I don't think they wanted any part of Kingsley.
Well, it's the same story with Roger Rosengarten. He's kind of been a turnstile, and he's competing with the guy they're kind of in and out at right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. But it wasn't necessarily about drafting a guy who's automatically going to immediately start over Colton McKivitz. It was about competition, and I talked about the draft before. Like we're multiple years into missed draft picks that they didn't have an opportunity to draft someone to compete. And it's like you can't wait until you get a top 10, top 5 pick to draft a no doubt starting. Like, you're not going to get Joe Alt. So you got to draft and develop somebody. And you're never going to get a tackle if you don't draft one, period. And even Colton McKivitz himself was a failed guard at first, got cut, and then brought back and ended up being a tackle. So it takes time. And it wasn't about Kingsley Suamataia or Roger Rosengarten stepping in day one, but it was about competition and trying to build on your offensive line and maybe find someone that could replace Colton McKivitz eventually, even as a rookie potentially. And Trent Williams isn't going to play forever too. And it's hard to find tackles, and you don't want to pay Mike McGlinchey money in the free agent market to get a mediocre Mike McGlinchey offensive tackle either. You got to draft and develop these guys, and you're never going to draft and develop one if you don't draft one. And that's kind of why I've looked on the defensive line. Look, you miss on Drake Jackson. Okay, we'll come back and draft another guy. And you said earlier that you were glad they didn't draft the defensive tackle. I wasn't. I thought they should have taken Johnny Newton in the first round this year. A defensive tackle who's he had some injuries. He had a foot injury. He's now on the field for Washington. By the way, Jonathan Allen maybe could become a trade target for the 49ers.
Yes, I think that's absolutely
one more time, since they did draft the young rookie that's now ready to
Adam
play.
Peters, help us out, man.
Yeah. And so I think the 49ers do have to take a hard look and keep bringing in more talent. And are we starting to see a little bit of a development problem on the defensive line? Because at some point, like, where Bosa was the easiest draft pick this regime has made, number 2 overall. Besides that, who have you drafted and developed on the defensive line? Everybody else has been either already on the team in Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, or has been a big, signing that they brought in. And probably their best moves on the defensive line have been the Arden Keys and the Omenahus, and maybe Yetur Gross-Matos could be that for them this year, a big end that kind of moves inside and give you some pass rush. I think we'll see more of him with Javon Hargrave out. But I think it's just that vacuum that's been created from the lack of draft picks is something we're seeing right now at those positions that are hard to get and hard to develop and that are very expensive to get on the free agent market. I'm talking defensive linemen and offensive tackles. And they haven't added any young talent at those positions for years.
49 Reefer says, you guys have a regular segment together, right? Is it this time every week? We had a scheduling conflict. This is what we ran. We usually do Thursday, 5 p.m., 8 p.m., but this is the best time to like and to subscribe to both channels and put that notification bell on so you know at least a little bit ahead of time when we are going to go live. But we try to do it on Thursday. But kind of back to that Chris Kocurek point, right? It's funny because they found these gems that end up going somewhere else, and they bet on their talent, right? Like even Cleveland Farrell last year was somebody that kind of helped them out. But as far as drafting guys and getting them to do what they want, right? Like it didn't work with Javon Kinlaw. It doesn't work with Drake Jackson. It's becoming now far and few between with this whole idea of like, oh, well, Chris Kocurek is going to get his hands on him and they're about to just, explode. It's like, yes, that's the hope with Yetur Gross-Matos, but they haven't had something like that since Arden Key and Omenahue. So I think that's kind of interesting when we're talking about that. Like, Robert Beal's another one. I see that in the chat as well. It's going to be hard to keep on banking on Chris Kocurek if we're not getting what we're getting from what he used to do. And even the guys that, like Javon Hargrave, all these other guys, they haven't necessarily taken a step up. Like and you understand that they're already, veterans and they shouldn't need to, but there hasn't been much growth, like in terms of like moves and guys like playing above. So the Chris Kocurek thing, it's wearing a little thin now when you start to see the results and what you've been getting back lately.
I think it's fascinating. And I've always geeked out on the NFL draft and team building. And this isn't a 49ers specific thing, but I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned by the names we're talking about right now. Drake Jackson, Robert Beal. Robert Beal wasn't even a starter in college, but he was
Georgia
athletic. Isaac Guerrero fits this to a T, and we'll see what he ends up being. It doesn't mean he's going to be a miss, but you look at the 49ers hits and misses, and you see them trying to chase athleticism in the draft. In a lot of cases, it hasn't worked out at all. When you see them draft Tarvarius Moore, and you see them draft Ambry Thomas, and Drake Jackson, and Robert Beal, and you see these players that are athletically gifted and they meet the height, weight, speed requirements, but they're being drafted outside of the top 100 in a lot of cases for a reason. and their production doesn't match. And guess what? They get to the NFL and their production still doesn't match. But when they draft the guys that are just wired like maniacs, like Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga and George Kittle, and those are all their big hits. So it's a great lesson to be learned that and it's also a lesson that, man, if you need someone who meets the height, weight, speed requirements and is a maniac, you better hope you have a first-round pick to draft them, because it's hard to find those, especially on defensive line and offensive tackle, because you're going to find some raw players. You're going to find some, you're going to have to be able to develop some of these players, and you're going to have some misses if you're just chasing talent and they don't have the character that matches. And I'm not talking about off-field character. I'm just talking about the way they're wired. And you look at all the hits the 49ers have had, these guys are always all wired very similar, and they're kind of animals. They're maniacs, right? And so, we're looking for maniacs out there.
And, if you're thinking about defensive tackle depth, and the 49ers certainly need it after the Jordan Elliott news from practice, Hassan Ridgeway is somebody that I think they'll probably turn to. Obviously, you mentioned T.Y. McGill. Kevin Gibbons is going to get a lot more run. Possibly Al Woods, who's somebody who's a little bit older, who could be somebody who's depth. But I'm going to put the percentage, and I'll ask you right after this, I'm going to put the percentage that the 49ers make a move for the defensive line at the trade deadline at about 65% right now, I would say.
I'll go under 65% just because it's not easy to make a deal, especially at the deadline in the NFL. I think it's a 99% chance the 49ers will make calls.
Oh, yeah.
Will they be able to consummate a deal and make a deal happen, especially like a significant type of a deal? Because it's pretty rare. This isn't the baseball trade deadline. This isn't the NBA trade deadline. And the 49ers have been one of the more active teams, and they still, they don't bring anybody in every single year, but they brought in McCaffrey. They brought in Chase Young last year. There was the Emmanuel Sanders trade, like
Randy Gregory,
top of the league. Yeah. And so there's probably a pretty good chance. It's probably better than 50%, but I think just most years, if you took the under on that, is it's just not that likely that a team is going to make a deal every single year. But the 49ers have that opportunity, and they're not going to sit back and let their D-line suck either. So right. John Lynch is a competitive guy, and Kyle Shanahan's a competitive guy, and clearly they've shown us that they're like, yeah, whatever, we'll trade some picks to be better right now. And so it'd probably be worth betting that the 49ers do make a move.
Yeah, and obviously the name that's floated out there, I see Callie in the chat, DJ Jones, obviously that's something like that again at the end of his contract. Same thing with Jonathan Allen, end of his contract. He does make a lot of money though. But again, when you're looking at it, it would be under the number that they have now, and it would go away in the next year. So it is very much a rental. And for somebody that you would get on the edge, I think it would be more of a Randy Gregory move than a splash move like a Chase Young. It would be somebody who's a little bit more of a veteran, possibly can give depth. Obviously, the Randy Gregory thing, he was good for a rotation, but he wasn't necessarily, moving the needle. But I think that's the type of move the 49ers are probably looking to make, and it'll be something that they'll bank on, whether it's a player who hasn't lived up to expectations based on traits or a situation, something like that they'll try to unearth from somebody else for like the cost of a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick.
I'm looking at Jonathan Allen's contract right now, 29 years old. He's going to be a free agent. Actually, he's going to be a free agent after 2025. So this wouldn't be a 1 year.
Oh, so it wouldn't be a 1 year. Okay.
Yeah, which is a little bit surprising. And it doesn't really hamstring the Washington Commanders in dead money. So they would save money by trading him. The 49ers would take on half of his base salary. So, it's $14 million base salary, which for a defensive lineman, $7 million. I think the 49ers would be okay taking on that money. Maybe they could work out a deal where the better pick they give, the more money Washington takes on in that sort of a deal. So Washington's a team to watch. If the rookie Johnny Newton, who I wanted the 49ers to draft instead of Ricky Pearsall in the first round, who, by the way, Adam Peters said they had a first-round grade on him. And it sounds like the 49ers didn't have first-round grades on anybody at pick 31. So that's interesting. Different draft boards there. I had a first-round grade on Johnny Newton. Now, the foot injury, they just had Eric Armstead dealing with a foot injury. Did they want to go down that road? Probably not. Maybe that's one of the reasons. Maybe it was a medical red flag for Johnny Newton. But guess what? The guy they drafted, gunshot wound aside, has also, been out, and actually out longer because of his shoulder injury than Jonathan Allen. But than Johnny Newton. But Jonathan Allen, anyway. So $14 million base salary. Next year's $15 million base salary. They wouldn't take on any of the signing bonus stuff, right? Obviously, the the Washington Commanders would eat that. So, 15 mil a year for Jonathan Allen, that's kind of a deal next year.
Yeah.
And, you pay half of that this year at the trade deadline, $7 million. I'd be okay with that. He might be one of the better players available. That's actually not different. That's about the same money as DJ Jones. Now, DJ Jones might be a little better run stuffer, and they know DJ Jones well. And I don't think they should have paid DJ Jones money that he left for in free agency. But at the same time, they haven't been able to replace him. And I wouldn't mind seeing that one technique back on the 49ers defensive line, that guy that can get upfield a little bit, but that can take on blocks. And I haven't really been paying that close of attention to DJ Jones if he's playing that well, but they haven't cut him or anything like that. And he's got a pretty big contract. So definitely, Washington and Denver are definitely two teams to watch.
Yeah, and it all depends on where Washington's going. Obviously everything right now in the NFC East is up in the air right now. The Cowboys aren't exactly impressive. I think Washington's probably the most exciting team. The Eagles did win against the New Orleans Saints, but they still look a little disjointed, especially at the quarterback position. And that a lot of that has to do with Saquon Barkley. There's going to be no AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, it looks like, this week. So things are getting hairy with injuries everywhere. And yeah, so it just depends on where Washington is. If Washington's ready to sell, Adam Peters, help us out, man. We'll gladly help you out with a 6th-round pick, and that you're really good with those. So yeah, just go get yourself another player, man. And just help us out, man. Help us out a little.
They might start running Johnny Newton at end anyways, just to get all their best defensive linemen on the field. So we'll see. Yeah. But enough about people who aren't 49ers. Should we talk more about players who are on the San Francisco 49ers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a big issue, and let's stick with the defense because I think you and I are lockstep with the offense. I think this offense is fine. Brock Purdy's playing very good football. Minnesota game had a few moments, but overall, these last 3 weeks, he's been, over 3 weeks, he's been great. Kind of showing everybody a little bit of what it might look like you were saying, down the line, if there is moves that need to be made without, Deebo, Kittle, things like that. I think that was really important because a lot of people were waiting to pile on Brock Purdy, and he had a game that you're not going to be able to point to now. Like, he's kind of just busting your narrative right there about the Avengers thing. But defensively, I think the 49ers are running a bunch of man, and Devondre Campbell just finds himself getting caught in these matchups, and everyone's identifying it. It's him and Isaac Yiadom that are two targets. And where's 22? Where's 59? And it happened over and over with Stafford. When you're running man and you're not really mixing things up and you know what you're going to get. Devondre Campbell was an all-pro, I want to say, in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, with the Green Bay Packers, largely on the back of being a coverage linebacker. I want to make sure that we get that out there. Like, a lot of people are saying, no, well, he's never been in coverage. No. That's exactly what he was. And that's exactly what he excelled at when he was an all-pro. Now it just seems like he's a walking target. And if you're not getting pressure up front, and if you're leaving him out there on man, you have Kyron Williams running choice routes on him. You can probably get him lined up against a tight end who's advantageous or something like that. I don't want to see that matchup anymore, but D. Winters should get playing time, but I don't know if that's the end-all fix. I think a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about with predictability and coverage and being able to mix things up. Blitz Campbell, don't put him out there so he can just get cooked on one-on-one. It's just like you're seeing it happen over and over, and you're not doing anything about it.
And I know Isaac Yiadom's been targeted a lot as well. Part of it is because you have to throw at somebody, right. And if they don't want to throw at Demo and Ward, the targets have to go somewhere. So I think that's part of it as well. And I think that's just, it shows how respected Diamador Lenore is now around the league and how good he's playing for the 49ers. Probably should sign him tomorrow if you can, before we see a new offseason of big cornerback contracts. But I'm not ready to bury some of those individual players yet in coverage on defense, just because if there's no pass rush, and how many linebackers in the league can just hang on and cover a running back that's given double moves on him when their quarterback has all day?
Just Fred.
Yeah. So that's where it gets a little bit tough for me, and that's where it all has to work together. And that's part of the disjointedness. But I think the 49ers would, obviously rather have a healthy Dre Greenlaw in there. D. Winters is faster at this stage in his career than Campbell, but I don't. Coverage is interesting, and that's why there's so much money and so much yardage being made over the middle of the field against linebackers right now, because there's so few guys like Fred Warner that are stout enough to come up and stop the run, that have the range to run and cover, and then also have the smarts and the ability to cover and know where they need to be. And Fred Warner has all those things. Sometimes you can be fast, and we've seen a lot of linebackers get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, and that's like another position. It's like running back that I probably wouldn't touch in the first round in most cases. because you see all these guys, because guess what? They meet the height, weight, speed, but that's a cerebral position, and they still don't cover well, even though they're fast. And so being fast isn't necessarily the reason you're a good coverage linebacker. And so I don't know. I think I'm not ready to bury Campbell. I'm not ready to bury Isaac Yiadom just because they've been targeted a lot, because somebody has to be targeted. And if you're not going to target, two guys, then it's going to be the next two guys that's getting targeted. And those are the next two guys on the field.
And I think it's less about, because I wasn't expecting Campbell to return to his all-pro form, right? Like, I don't think it's that. I think I'm less frustrated with the player and more frustrated with, you're seeing this happen over and over and you're not doing anything about it.
It's like I'm not mad at Ronnie Bell. I'm mad that he was put in the position that you have to rely on him to make a play.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the frustrating part. And it's a similar feeling with Campbell at linebacker.
Right. And I think as a player, it's nice that your coach has confidence. But if you're watching and we're just talking about from an adjustment standpoint, it's what's wrong with sending Campbell and having someone else come up and replace him in coverage, perhaps a safety, something like that can have a better shot. It's frustrating because it's making one player look a certain way. And again, I was not expecting him to return to his all-pro coverage linebacker form. But it's frustrating to watch you do the same thing over and over and over, especially when you're just rushing four. You're not creating any sort of pressure, and that could really help on the back end. It just points to the word is disjointed. It's if one's working, the other one's not. Everything just hasn't fallen into place, and it feels like this is the second straight year of it, because I think this is exactly what we were thinking about with Steve Wilkes as well too. Now, I think what we need to do is give a little bit more grace to Nick Sorensen, because the frustration with Steve Wilkes was, we've got ourselves a veteran DC, a guy who's been a head coach, and he's a defensive guy, and he's been in this league for a while. So I understand the frustration from that standpoint, because you kind of expect him to walk in and hit the ground running. With Sorensen, there is going to be a little bit of growth. And again, I'm old enough to remember when people wanted D'Amico Ryans fired after the first half of games. I'm old enough to remember when Robert Saleh had that defense and he was trying to get them going, and they get it going in 2019. I'm not saying that I'm predicting this from happening, but I'm not ready to throw the book 3 games at Nick Sorensen, based on past history, and he's just trying to figure out what's working for him. But it's just right now things aren't. Early returns have not been so good.
And it also kind of brings me back full circle to what I was talking about with the defensive line and who do you play, who do you pay, who do you draft? When the Niners started playing defense in 2019, what do? That offseason, they drafted Nick Bosa and they spent a second-round pick and free agent dollars to bring in Dee Ford, because the defense was non-functional without a pass rush. And all of a sudden, it had this outside pass rush. And like, oh my God, this is so much better. Everyone else is on the entire team is now better. And that's where I'm at with the 49ers right now is, it's so hard to cover in this league and the rules are against you. Pressure the quarterback, make the mistakes, make it easier for your guys to cover. If that means, and if that means you can't play a lot of man because you don't have sticky shutdown guys, well, hardly any teams do anyway. So play a little bit more zone. The big thing with Wilkes last year was they were playing zone, but they weren't playing tight enough in coverage in their zone, because zone becomes man. At a certain point, you got to cover a person, right? So I think that's where it was last year with Wilkes. In some cases, was they needed to tighten up how close they covered human beings while they were in zone instead of covering grass. Do the 49ers need to go back to more zone? Do they need to blitz? Because that was another thing Wilkes was doing. And I think he might have been onto something from a standpoint of, look, I'm not going to sit back and not get home. That's not a good idea. If the front four can't get there alone, and it seems like the front four the last couple of years have had a little bit more trouble than in years past getting home with just those four. And if you don't bring pressure, then guess what? You guys are hung out and have to cover all day. And if you got a linebacker on a mismatch, it's not going to work out well for you, no matter who the linebacker is.
Right. And this is a perfect spot, get right spot for the 49ers defense to figure some things out, right? Like, obviously, the Patriots, and let's just be frank, I'm not dismissing anybody. Obviously, any given Sunday is rearing its ugly head every single week. But the Patriots don't exactly have people that scare you, right? Like, Polk's a rookie. Hunter Henry has been Jacoby Brissett's kind of, security blanket. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson, I'm kind of interested to see how they take away the run in this game. It turned them a little bit more one-dimensional, but this is a get-right confidence boosting game for them to kind of see the ball go through the hoop, and then they start to figure things out a little bit. I think this is a perfect bounce-back spot. Not to say that this is, going to be a pushover game, even though I have the 49ers winning, by a pretty wide margin in this one, especially just considering the talent gap. But it's almost like the 49ers kind of like are a struggling shooter right now on defense, where You're throwing up threes. They're not going in. Get yourself a layup. Get yourself a free throw. Once you see that ball go through the hoop again, you kind of remember who you are. You start to figure some things out. This is a perfect spot for them to do that. I know we were saying this all last week with how banged up the Rams offensive line was and what's going to happen. You have to remember Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay were not going to allow him to be out there just, standing back in the pocket. Stafford can make all the throws. I did want to point out a little bit too what you were talking about with Yadam. I felt like there were times where Sean McVay, his play design was incredible. I think back to the Tutu Atwell crosser where they bring him into the bunch formation and almost get him a running start. And by that time, Yadam is getting around the bunch and he's never going to catch him there. So I'm not going to put that on Yadam like, hey, why aren't you covering? I don't think anybody would have been able to keep up with Atwell there as well, too. But this is a game that kind of presents a challenge for the 49ers to say, we need to figure some things out. We can figure some things out against this defense, maybe experiment a little bit more, especially if the game starts to get a little bit out of hand. Or if you have the Patriots in a predictable offensive spot where they have to throw, you can start to build some confidence here. And I think that's a little bit of it too, is the 49ers just look like on defense, they're just unsure of themselves as a whole. And that goes it goes basically for everybody but Fred Warner at this point. It just looks like everybody else is just a little bit out of the mix a little bit.
And look, McVay, you could argue that Matthew Stafford's the best quarterback in the NFC, and Tutu Atwell runs a 4.3 at least, and he was a pretty highly drafted guy. And you got a great coach there. And Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and Sam Darnold can really sling it. And kudos to the 49ers for helping him develop and as a veteran quarterback in the NFL last year as a member of the Niners. And obviously Kevin O'Connell's a good coach as well. And so, you get beat on some plays over the top, but we better not see Jacoby Brissett going deep over the top and hitting Demario Douglas or Polk or Javon Baker or whoever the New England Patriots are throwing out there at wide receiver. Former 49er is still hurt, right?
Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, he's not playing. He's still out. Yeah. Okay, good. No.
Yeah, we don't need any revenge games in this.
If Kendrick Bourne hits you over the top,
right?
That's not even what he does anyway. You're in trouble. But KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton's got speed. But
Tyquan Thornton's got speed,
but he's not done anything in the NFL. Right? If you're getting beat over the top by these guys, just pack it in.
Yeah, and look. 45 minutes in, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Over 300 people in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell so you know when you get your next serving of Picante. That's the one we're running with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna leave Peacock and Aponte in the titles, but this is the official Picante show. But I do want to ask you this, because I would be remiss in my duties as a 49ers content creator if I did not bring this up. And this is a good topic probably to take us home up to the hour. Brandon Aiyuk. And there's a lot of issues with what people are saying about drops. Separation has not been a problem, in my opinion. And I think it was evident in the Rams game that he was getting Juwan Jennings his advantageous matchups, and that Juwan Jennings was taking advantage of that. But I scoff at the people that kind of say to me, well, if he's separating, why is he not getting the ball? Well, the Rams were rolling coverage every way. So if he's separating, he wins his route. But there's a safety crashing down from the top, or there's someone underneath. Brock Purdy can't throw that ball, but he's getting open. Now, the question is this, Brian, and I'm going to throw this one to you. Christian Gonzalez is a very good cover corner. What if we have another game in which Brandon Aiyuk, let's just say the word underperforms. I'm not going to say that because I don't think that's the word, but underperforms or gives us another 5-catch whatever game like we had against the Los Angeles Rams. Are people just going to tear him to shreds because they think they're really on the brink of it if they haven't already started?
Yeah, I mean, there's for sure going to be box score scouting, and there always is. And if we're box score scouting, but we're watching the game, I think there are some issues with how Brandon Aiyuk is playing and how he's playing inside the offense. And I wouldn't point to him not getting open. I would point to times where he's falling down, dropping balls that could be touchdowns. It just doesn't look clean. He looks like a guy who didn't have training camp. That's all it is. I don't care about the 5 catches part, but the 5 catches on 10 targets part.
That's not efficient.
It's the ball still went his way 10 times. He came up with 5 catches. They're all short, 6.5 yards per catch or something like that. That's like Wes Welker slot little minion usage, right? That's not Brandon Aiyuk outside wide receiver usage. So, but yeah, look, their defense are playing him a certain way, and there's like, okay, sure, make Juwan Jennings beat us, and then like, oh wait, I guess we shouldn't do that because he's beating us right now. And so there's a reason why Juwan Jennings was wide open on a lot of plays, because that's the coverage was rolling away from Juwan and towards Brandon Aiyuk, and Brock Purdy, to his credit, found him. And he might have wished he had a couple of throws back, but it's just, again, it's a little, the disjointed thing is just, it's kind of apropos for everything. And that's the way I feel right now with Brandon Aiyuk too. He looks like a guy who hasn't been through training camp, and it just looks like a little awkward. Like all of his catches look a little bit too difficult for him being able to still get open. It's like, it's like a little behind him or a little low, or he's kind of falling down, or it's, they just miss on it, or, he can't haul it in. It's just a little bit off. And I think that'll get together at some point, but I think this is his training camp right now. I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and he's not exactly a burner. It's just he looks a step slow, right? Like he's still creating separation because of his route running acumen. I want to make sure that we make that clear. Like he understands stacking leverages and finding ways to get himself open with his routes. He's still brilliant at that, but he is a step slow right now. Now, the thing is this. Brandon Aiyuk is going to see the coverages that CeeDee Lamb sees, that Justin Jefferson sees, that Amon-Ra St. Brown sees at times. Like, the bigger guys, Devontae Adams sees, right? The bigger guys are always going to have that. This is going to continue. This is not something that is just a what. Now, it's much harder to focus in on Aiyuk when Deebo's on the field, when Kittle's on the field, even when McCaffrey's on the field. It's harder to do that. But those guys all demand the same kind of attention. Those guys also produce. So a lot of people are kind of just frustrated, I guess, with that. With me, I understand that it's going to be a little bit of a process. I still see him getting open, so I still feel like the breakout is coming. And I think that's the way that I'm kind of viewing it right now. I'm not panicked. I do think that right now he is obviously working himself into shape, but just given the offseason with everything that was said and everything that was done, fans are just not happy right now. And I think that is what's contributing to it. If he missed all of training camp and let's say it was an injury or something like that, I think people would give him far more leeway and grace. And I think that goes without saying. It feels very obvious. But due to that offseason and the things that he said, and he wants to be paid, and I'm a Ferrari and everything, it's hard to right now, like, for fans to grasp like where he is and say you kind of did this to yourself. And I think that's really what fans are worried about.
Yeah, and it was the same for Trent Williams. He told the broadcasters last week on Fox, he's like, "Oh, I've never felt like this in my entire career. This is absolutely affecting me that I didn't have a training camp. How could it not, right?" And so I think that's the case for both Trent and Brandon Aiyuk right now. Brandon Aiyuk's just a little bit more magnified because of there's just more statistical production that you're looking at with someone like him, and he doesn't have the veteran years that Trent Williams has to lean on. I want to see. And we saw a little bit last week. There was like a quick hitch at the beginning of the game. They gave him did they give him like a jet sweep or something like that last week?
I think so. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like a little shovel pass or something like that. Like I like that. I want to see, however many scripts. Is it 25 plays that Kyle Shanahan scripts?
Yep, first 20. 25.
Yeah. I want to see a bunch of those for Aiyuk, and not like easy completions. Like give him some of the stuff that you give to Deebo, like move him around, get him.
It was a pop pass. That Jedi's right. It was a pop pass. Same idea.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's one of his 5 receptions, technically.
Yeah, and a hitch, and those were both very early in the game. He had 3 catches through the normal like flow of the game after that. But so feed him early, get him going, get the confidence going, get the ball into one of your better players' hands. I want to see a little more after the catch from Aiyuk. That's something that he hasn't really translated from his college days to his pro days. I feel like there's more there, as if you move him around and give him some Deebo looks, make it so teams can't key on him as easy like other teams do with their best wide receivers. I want to see that type of usage, especially if Deebo is going to be out again. Get the ball into his hands a lot in a lot of different ways early, and then allow him to also make plays within the flow of the game all over the field.
Right, and I don't think the 49ers are just going to allow him to be out there with Gonzalez the entire time. I think you have to be able to move him inside, keep him away from Gonzalez, find ways to get him free releases, either with motion or just, rub routes or confusion or switch releases. Gonzalez is a hell of a player, but he's not going to shut out Brandon Aiyuk. And I don't think it's going to be Brandon Aiyuk can't get open against him. I don't think it's that. But I do think if you're the 49ers, there's creative ways to get him open and free him from that. There shouldn't be a way where you're just like, well, just leave Aiyuk out there with Gonzalez, and if he gets nothing, that's fine. We take him away. It's not going to be like that, and I don't think Gonzalez has the ability to just take away Aiyuk that entire way.
Or will we see what Belichick talked about recently and how he used to use Darrelle Revis? Not saying that Gonzalez is anywhere near Darrelle Revis, but what if they put Darrelle Revis on they put Gonzalez on Juwan Jennings and then roll coverage and have somebody over the top of Aiyuk and kind of double him in a way. That might be the way to play it against the 49ers.
Maybe, but that's why George Kittle's back, and then that in that space, then all of a sudden, I don't know if that works because you do have someone else that's there. Obviously, look, after receiver, and I'm not going to pile on the guy anymore, man. He's already hurt enough. And, I think I've said his name one too many times this entire week. But when you're down to your depth and you're at Chris Conley and that other guy and, Cowan can't get on the field, it is important that, you have the guys that you can bank on to really help you. And I think that's where Kittle comes in this game. And if it is Deebo as well, too, I don't know if the Patriots can even employ that because of all the attention that Deebo is gonna elicit.
Yeah, it had that third playmaker, that extra guy you can turn to and give different looks and that can make plays for you. And Eric Saubert's fine backup but he's not George Kittle. And so that'll help to have him back for sure. And hopefully Deebo's back on the field as well. How rich are your platelets, Jason? Are you a platelet rich guy?
What does that mean? Wait, what?
Your plasma, your platelet rich plasma. Have you had any injections? Are you just naturally rich in platelets in your plasma? Are we worried about how long it's going to take for Christian McCaffrey to come back, which is very likely not to be before the bye week in week 9 now?
I mean, not more than I was before. And I think everyone's going to look at that and say, oh my God, well, he's going there. I think he's just trying to do whatever he can to help, right? And I think regardless of whether this works or not, I still think that he was probably on track for the same thing. I don't know if this will help, but I know Kobe Bryant did it. The blood spinning thing. He went over there and did it. And for anybody that's like, well, why is he going to another country? It's not FDA approved here to do that, right? This is something that is kind of. So I guess if you want to be pessimistic, you want to say, well, he's attempting something that is, I guess experimental or not allowed around here. But for me, I don't think that this means anything that would change his time. I thought his time was going to still be similar to whatever it is at this point. But if this can help, then why not take a shot? I'm not really too worried about it. I still think there's going to be that same timetable that he had.
Yeah, it's good and bad because it's bad that he thinks he needs to go do this and that treatment in this country isn't good enough. It's not going to be enough to get him healthy. That's not a great thing. And the thing I don't like about it is that he's not going to come back, the first chance he can from IR, because if he gets this treatment, then it's going to be an extra, few weeks or month or 2 months or whatever it is. So he's the second half of the season guy right now, period. And that's fine though, because Jordan Mason's a baller, and Christian McCaffrey brings a lot, but the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan will be able to run the football. And it's been phenomenal to watch a guy get a shot and, is number 2 in the league in rushing right now going into week 4. So I don't have a problem with the running game right now. Christian McCaffrey, get him healthy so you have that player when you need him in the playoffs. Just don't be so bad in the meantime. And it won't be because of the running game and because you miss Christian McCaffrey if they're not in the playoff hunt, because it's other stuff that's hurting the 49ers. It's not the running back. It's crazy because you think, oh, Christian McCaffrey. I remember there was a poll in the offseason, and there was like Good Morning Football or somebody, and there was like, let's rank the most important players on the San Francisco 49ers. And almost everybody had Christian McCaffrey. I'm like, have you never watched Kyle Shanahan offense? Where Christian McCaffrey showed up? It's like, Christian McCaffrey's awesome, but he doesn't make it go. He was like 10th on my list, as awesome as he is. And don't get me wrong, Christian McCaffrey's awesome. But this goes back to the argument about paying for running backs. And it's like, dude, Niners will run the ball just fine. They're not going to have the dynamo that Christian McCaffrey is, but guess what? They're number 2 in the league in rushing right now with Jordan Mason, and he's got the same career yards per carry. He's better career yards per carry than Christian McCaffrey does. And it's not that Christian McCaffrey's not good. It's just, have we not watched football to know that the running back is not going to matter that much? I don't have a problem with it. I just like the extra value he brings. So the point is, get Christian McCaffrey healthy, platelet rich plasma, get those PRP injections, and we'll see you in January. Like, just be good and then add that element, and hopefully the 49ers can get over the top. But you got to be in the playoff hunt right now. 49ers are in last place, Jason, in the NFC West.
Yeah, that's why this feels like a must-win game. Let me go back on record. The 49ers, this is a must-win game. Like, absolutely. I know I hate that to throw that in week 4, but 1-3, history is not kind to teams that are 1-3 trying to make the playoffs. But if any team is equipped, especially with reinforcements coming, it might be the 49ers to overcome that, but you don't want to put yourself in that position. A loss to the Patriots would be panic time. That's when you really start to think, okay, something's really, really wrong here. I know we're getting close to an hour. We have over 330 people in here. Once again, like this video on both channels, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell for when we go live. Peacock and Aponte, we do this weekly, the Picante Show. But I want to end with this question. We got some good news about Ricky Pearsall. Sounds like he is going to start practicing, getting ready to go. But I have a question, Brian. If Jacob Cowing, who missed less time than Ricky Pearsall, is far away, is Ricky Pearsall even going to sniff the field if he's been farther away from the team? I don't think he's going to get on the field right away.
Yeah, like 2026, 2027 might see that Pearsall and Cowing connection. It'll be so fun to watch for the San Francisco 49ers. I could never, ever, just knowing what I know about Kyle Shanahan, the way it went with Deebo, the way it went with Brandon Aiyuk, that was year 2 for Brandon Aiyuk, remember, with the doghouse. That wasn't even rookie Brandon Aiyuk. So I'm not going to bet on any rookie wide receiver doing anything for the 49ers. Year 3 is the year for wide receivers. And Kyle Shanahan's comments about Cowing, even if he felt that way, like little coach speak would be nice.
No, he said he's a ways off. Like that again, like right, like it's what we were talking about all offseason when he asked about Cam Latu. Hey, does Cam Latu have a chance to be tight end too? He's like, oh God, no. Like he's just like, yeah, it's just like, why are you saying it like that?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So if Cowing's that far away, I can't see how Ricky Pearsall's any closer. He was drafted higher, but Brandon Aiyuk was a first-round pick too. And according to Kyle Shanahan, he wouldn't have sniffed the field in his first 2 seasons if he wasn't forced to because of injury. So there you go.
Correct. And that's the thing. The trust circle. Are you in it? I don't think you are. But Ronnie Bell's in it. We know that for a fact. Ronnie Bell's in it. Great run blocker, I've been told, Brian, but I think they should stop throwing him the football. If he's a great run blocker, then keep him on when you run the football.
There's a lot of reasons to like Ronnie Bell, but man, if you can't find a way to get the ball into Cowing's hands, then why'd you draft him? Would be my question, because Ronnie Bell at this point is not someone that should be doing anything other than being on special teams, to be honest with you.
Special teams, we can do a whole other podcast about that. My message to you guys, get fucking better. All of you. Everyone. Not just the kicker, not just the punter, the coverage, everything. Everyone. All of you. That is it. If the 49ers right now defense is a bottom 5 unit right now, the special teams unit is a bottom 1 unit. And for anybody who just is, I don't think anybody's dismissing it just because it was such a large factor in this game. Special teams can ruin your season. Ask the Green Bay Packers. How did the 49ers beat the Green Bay Packers to move on to the NFC Championship game? Because their special teams unit was worse than the 49ers, and 1 block punt and no offensive touchdowns can send you home, even if Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback.
What really worries me is that Kyle Shanahan's like, oh, yeah, we knew the fake punt was coming. And they still
just shut up. I wish you would have told me that. I wish you would have just said that you didn't know. Please just say that, because if you didn't, stop it.
Yeah. Kyle Shanahan, I think, doesn't want to care about special teams. That's why he throws that's why he's the highest drafted punter and kicker in the NFL, is because he's like, look, let's just throw a draft pick at it, because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to go scout Brandon Aubrey wherever he's playing football. I don't want to go, I want to worry about these other things. And so they just kind of threw resources at special teams and kickers and hoped that was going to make it work. And look, I'm 55-yarder for
not a
Jake
chip shot.
Moody. Like, it's not a chip shot. You're not going to expect to make those every single time. The game should have never come down to a field goal anyway. The 49ers should have won by multiple scores. So they blew that in a lot of other ways. But again, it's always going to be there. It's like, 3rd round kicker.
That's it. If you're a 3rd round kicker, you better make every single one. If Justin Tucker's missing him, that's fine. But again, look around. I mean, even Aubrey missed one yesterday, but he's drilling them from 65, and they found him on the street. He used to play soccer. I think it's almost like your running back don't pay them thing is kickers don't matter, and that is absolutely I'll die on that.
They just like learn from history. No highly drafted kickers are ever good. All the kickers that are good in the NFL were good like on their second team. They're already older, have been around, they've bounced around, they were undrafted. Like there's no good kickers that just come into the league highly drafted and are awesome and stay on their team forever. Doesn't happen.
Right, and the variance from year to year, like, you know, just think about David Akers. 1 year couldn't miss, next year couldn't make anything. It's just it's too hard to justify valuable draft capital for it when you have all this historical evidence that's just in front of you of like, just find the guy that you know used to kick in high school, you know, at your Trader Joe's and say, hey man, you want to kick some football? Or, you know, it's just like how the little Giants found their kicker. He was just he was kicking off the cans, and you know, that's the guy that you go get.
Yep.
I think we're done with the kicker stuff. Enough. I don't want to get pissed off.
It's time to end this show. We're talking about kickers.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Special teams. It's a third of the game. It's the third phase. You can't skip special teams. It's an important phase. And it's one phase that the New England Patriots have been good for a long time. So don't get beaten that phase, 49ers.
Right, 100%. Over an hour in here, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in to us again. Like this video, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell on both channels. A lot of content coming this week. Brian, tell them everything that you have going on and what else is coming up.
Locked on 49ers with my guy. Did I say Niners? Locked on 49ers with my guy, Eric Crocker, daily on the Locked On Podcast Network, breaking down everything with the 49ers. The Peacock and Williamson NFL show, also on Locked On. Matt Williamson, former NFL scout. We talk about the entire league daily, and then you go overtime, OT with BP. That's where this show is being simulcasted right now, so make sure you subscribe up there. It's YouTube only as well, and you can find me on Twitter at BD Peacock.
Right, and tonight, Sprint Ride Option at 5:15 Pacific, 8:15 Eastern. Andrew and I will preview this entire game. We have Dr. Nirav Pandya coming on to talk about the Christian McCaffrey injury and everything else, so I think there's going to be some valuable information there as well. And again, guys, you see it up in the corner. Underdog, promo code Aponte, double your first deposit up to $1,000. And if you're doing NFL Pick'em today or this weekend, you're getting 10% back in bonus cash.
Hey, Jason, ask the doc where I can get like some maybe black market PRP, because I got some tendon things going on in my body, and see if he can hook that up for me.
Yes, absolutely. I kind of hurt my shins like just walking. So yeah, maybe I need it too, man. You know, I mean, look, it's a grueling season. It's only week 4, and even the podcasters are falling apart, man. So you can imagine what's going on with the NFL players.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, come on. They could all use some platelet-rich plasma. Right.
100%, guys. Thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll catch up with you guys next week. Make sure you're subscribed on both channels. Everything. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you later for Sprint Ride Option. For Brian, for Jason, we're out of here. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason.